Hey guys, tonight we step into a warm, wood-smoked Korean kitchen where ancient fermentation first begins to glow quietly in the corner like a sleepy lantern. Outside, the village dusk settles over clay-tiled roofs and a soft wind rattles bundles of drying herbs. Inside, you stand barefoot on polished floorboards, the air rich with salt, steam, and something deeper, an earthy hum, rising from a single clay crock that sits in the shadows like it has secrets it's been dying to share for the last 1,000 years. And honestly, if you accidentally open this jar too early, you probably won't survive this. I mean emotionally. The smell alone might send you into another timeline. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from tonight, plus your local time. I love seeing how far these sleepy little journeys travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The clay crock breathes. You swear you can hear it, just the faintest pup of bubbles rising beneath its lid. You kneel beside it, running your fingers over the vessel's warm, slightly rough surface. Ongi breathes by design. Its pores let air slip in and out like a living creature, helping fermentation shift from raw ingredients towards something wiser. You lift the lid just enough to let a puff of warm, savory aroma escape, earthy, salty, faintly vegetal, a little funky, but friendly, like a soup that's been thinking about its life choices. A mainstream historical fact hums in your memory. Ancient Korean fermentation likely began during the Three Kingdoms period, when clay jars, salt from the coasts, and an agricultural boom created perfect conditions for preserving food through long winters. Fermentation wasn't optional, it was survival. If your jars failed, so did the household. You press your palm onto the lid again, feeling how slightly warm it is from internal activity. They're alive, an auntie in the corner says casually as she cuts radish into neat cubes. She doesn't even look up. The microbes, she adds, as though discussing the weather. They like company. You nod seriously, even though you're 80% sure she's teasing you, or 20% sure she's not. The line between science and folklore in this kitchen is blurrier than kimchi brine. You watch her sprinkle salt over the cubes with dramatic flair, like a magician seasoning the atmosphere itself. The radish squeaks under her knife, releasing a bright, watery scent that cuts through the heavier aromas. She hands you a cube. You taste it. It's crisp, biting, salty enough to remind you that your tongue is mortal, and yet refreshing in a way that makes you want to eat 12 more. Don't, she warns, already reading your mind. Those are for the jar. You set the remaining cubes aside with monk-like restraint. Another auntie enters, carrying a basket of Napa cabbage leaves that drape over her arm like green silk. She drops them gently on the table, and their scent, fresh, grassy, clean, momentarily lifts the entire room. You run your hands along the cool, veined leaves. They feel like they've been waiting all day to join the crock. As you prepare the vegetables, a quirky tidbit floats into your thoughts. Some early Korean households believed every jar had its own personality, some gentle, fermenting quietly, others fiery, bubbling so aggressively they rattled their own lids. Families sometimes named their jars, as though they were mildly troublesome pets. The one in front of you feels curious, maybe a little dramatic. You get along immediately. You begin layering vegetables with salt inside a basin, massaging them until your hands glisten and the leaves begin to soften. The brine gathers at the bottom like tears of joy from an overly grateful cabbage. You work methodically, and the aunties approve with small nods. Outside, night deepens. Crickets chirp. The kitchen lantern flickers. You can feel yourself slipping into the rhythm of the place. Slow, patient, domestic, in the best way. This isn't cooking, it's tending, a tiny ritual that humans have repeated for centuries. You move to the hearth, where garlic, ginger, and scallions rest on a wooden tray. Their scents rise the moment you slice into them, sharp, warming, bright. Your fingers smell like a combination of, I'm seasoning something amazing, and I need to avoid rubbing my eyes for the next 2 hours. As you mince the garlic, one auntie leans in and whispers, "Be generous. Garlic keeps the bad spirits away." Then she pauses. "And the bad boyfriends?" You laugh quietly because she's 100% serious, and also 100% correct. Another voice floats from the far corner. Historians still argue whether early kimchi even resembled modern versions without chili peppers. Recipes were milder, saltier, more like brined vegetables than fire-kissed ferments. The auntie shrugs. What matters is that people shared it. Her philosophy is better than half the academic papers you've read. You gather the aromatics into a wooden bowl, mixing them with handfuls of salt and a little water. The aroma rises like the essence of a cozy winter night. You're starting to understand how ancient kitchens warmed themselves not with heat, but with the slow, steady presence of food that gets better with time. You return to the crock. Its lid shifts slightly as though nudged from inside by invisible workers. You imagine tiny fermentation sprites in aprons going, "We got this." Probably not historically accurate, but charming. When you pour the brined mixture into the jar, the sound is soft and intimate, a gentle glug-glug, like the jar is sipping it gratefully. You tuck the cabbage leaves inside, pressing them down until they're fully submerged beneath the salty, fragrant water. The jar feels fuller immediately, heavier with potential. The aunties gather around, all leaning in as though witnessing a birth. You place the lid gently on top. The eldest woman taps it twice with her fingertips. "Sleep well," she murmurs. And just like that, your first ancient Korean fermentation begins. The crock sits against the wall, warming in the lamplight. You sit beside it, feeling the air thicken with savory scents and old stories. You can almost sense time itself slowing down around you. This jar will take days, weeks, maybe months to ripen. But you're already fermenting into the rhythm of the past. You wake the next morning to the gentle scrape of salt being poured and the distant hush of waves brushing somewhere beyond the village fields. The air in the kitchen tastes different today, Brinier. Sharper, like the world itself is reminding you that without salt, none of this ancient culinary magic would survive more than a week. You stretch, rub your eyes, and shuffle toward the doorway, where an auntie already waits with a woven basket of coarse sea salt, so white it gleams like tiny frozen stars. She tilts it toward you. "This," she announces, "is how we survived long before ice boxes, refrigerators, or whatever noisy inventions you young people have now." You nod respectfully, resisting the urge to explain modern appliances. She wouldn't care. Salt is her religion, and the sea is its cathedral. You follow her outside into the crisp morning light. The village sits comfortably between mountains and coastline, the land sloping gently toward a horizon lined with soft, shimmering blue. You taste salt on the wind, not sharply, but faintly, like a whispered reminder. You inhale deeply. The breeze cools your skin, carrying with it that subtle mineral note that Koreans have relied on for thousands of years. A mainstream historical fact slips into your thoughts. Korea's long coastline and abundant salt flats allowed early communities to preserve vegetables, fish, and grains through harsh winters. Salted foods were lifelines, not luxuries. Kimchi, jeotgal, jang, pickles, none of them would exist without salt's ability to tame decay and invite fermentation. The auntie hands you a small wooden shovel. You gulp. She points to a low line of shallow pans near the shore salt beds, evaporated by sun and wind. Help, she says simply. So you help. You drag the shovel through the crystallized salt, which crunches and shifts with a satisfying sound, like walking on fresh snow, but crunchier, sassier. The salt sparkles in the light. You lift a scoop to your nose. It smells faintly like the sea, but cleaner, purer, as if filtered through sunlight. A young apprentice jogs past with an armful of kelp. For fermentation, he calls out proudly before disappearing behind the storage shed. The auntie rolls her eyes. He says, fermentation, like he invented it. You grin. The morning is already off to a charming start. As you carry the salt back toward the kitchen, a quirky tidbit rises from the depths of old memories. Some ancient Korean households believed salt could trap evil spirits, especially the moody ones that tried to sneak into jars. People sprinkled salt at doorways, under crocks, and even onto their shoulders during storms. It wasn't just food preservation, it was supernatural insurance. Inside the kitchen, a ceramic basin sits waiting with thin cuts of fish, tiny anchovies, and larger slices of croaker. Your nose twitches. It's potent, but not in a bad way. More like, I respect this fish for its honesty. An elder motions for you to sprinkle salt generously over the fish. You do, watching as the salt begins to draw moisture out immediately, turning the surface glistening and sleek. Salt first, she says, then time, then patience. Everything else is decoration. The fish will eventually become jeotgal, deeply fermented seafood that ancient Koreans treasured for its intense flavor and long shelf life. You stir the mixture carefully, feeling the weight of history in each motion. The salt is scratchy under your nails, cool against your fingers, gritty like sand, but more purposeful. The auntie opens a clay jar beside you. The smell inside nearly knocks you into another century. She waves you closer anyway. Smell, she demands. You do. It's salty, pungent, oceanic, and complex enough to send your senses into a minor existential crisis, but also oddly comforting, like the ocean telling you it's been around long enough to know what it's doing. Jeotgal, she declares proudly. Very old, very smart, very delicious, unless you sniff it too long. She shuts the lid before you fully ascend to the astral plane. She takes your hand and leads you outside again. The sun is climbing higher, warming the rooftops. She gestures toward a long row of ongi jars basking in the morning light like a sleepy terracotta army. The jars look identical at first glance, but as you walk closer, you notice slight variations in shape, texture, glaze. This one holds salted greens, she says, patting a large jar gently. This one holds fish sauce. She thumps the next jar. This one holds secrets. She winks. You decide not to ask. A villager waves enthusiastically and opens his own jar, releasing a cloud of salty aroma so intense it sends birds scattering from the nearby tree. Morning, he shouts cheerfully. You wave back while trying not to inhale too deeply. Historians still argue whether ancient Koreans developed salt fermentation independently or through influence from early coastal trade networks. The evidence overlaps. Salt-making techniques from China, fish sauce traditions from Southeast Asia, local innovations in storage and mineral content. But standing here with salt drying on your hands and ocean wind brushing your face, you suspect the truth is simple. People everywhere learn to listen to the sea. You crouch beside an ongi jar, resting your palm against its warm side. The clay is sun-soaked, vibrating slightly as gases build and release inside. The jar feels like a slow heartbeat. You murmur softly, "Salt keeps you safe, huh?" The auntie answers without turning around. "Salt keeps everything safe if you don't get lazy." You grin. You won't get lazy. She sets a new basket in front of you, radishes, cucumbers, garlic stems, all destined to become salted, brined, or layered into jars. The vegetables whisper their crispness under your touch. You slice and salt them, spreading the grains evenly, letting the moisture rise. The kitchen fills again with the scent of transformation, that unmistakable beginning of becoming. Every salted piece you lay out feels like a tiny promise: survival now, flavor later. Outside, the tide rolls in gently, washing the sands clean, pulling away yesterday to make room for today. And you, brine-stained and sun-warmed, find yourself anchored between sea and salt, learning how ancient Koreans preserved not just food, but time. You return to the kitchen after a brief break in the cool morning air, and the moment you slide the door open, a wave of aromas greets you: salted vegetables softening in their first brine, fresh garlic being pounded in a stone mortar, and something deeper, richer, almost shy, the earliest whisper of kimchi beginning to wake inside its crock. You step toward the table, where Napa cabbage leaves now lie limp and glossy, transformed overnight from crisp fans into silky, pliant sheets, ready to absorb whatever flavors you dare give them. One auntie waves you over with a sense of ceremony. Today, she says, you learn how vegetables become stories. She taps the cabbage confidently. Kimchi is not food. Kimchi is patience. You nod, partly because you agree, and partly because this woman could intimidate a boulder. She lifts the softened cabbage and presses it into your hands. It folds gracefully, still cool but not stiff. The brine drips between your fingers in slow, lazy droplets. You shake off the excess, and she guides you to the hearth, where a red paste waits in a large wooden bowl. It glows like a sunset trapped in mud, warm, thick, and fragrant. The paste is a mix of garlic, ginger, scallions, salt, and radish strips. No chili, yet not in this early time period, but complexity hums beneath the surface. You dip your fingertips into it. It's cold, thicker than you expected. It clings like it doesn't want to let go. A mainstream historical fact slips gently into your thoughts. Early kimchi predates chili peppers by centuries. Before gochu arrived from the Americas in the 16th century, kimchi relied on brine, aromatics, and fermentation alone. It tasted clean, sharp, and lightly tangy, closer to pickled vegetables than the fiery red we know today. An auntie laughs as you smell your fingers. Don't worry, she says. It's only dangerous if you insult it. You decide not to. She demonstrates, first lifting a cabbage leaf, spreading the aromatic mixture from base to tip, folding it neatly like tucking a blanket around a sleeping child. You mimic her movements, slower but intentional, smoothing paste into every curve. The scent rises around you: sharp garlic, slightly sweet radish, cool brine, and that undefinable fermentation promise that feels like the kitchen is whispering secrets directly into your bloodstream. You place each coated leaf into a clean crock, pressing it down gently until a soft squish echoes up the sides. The sound is faintly comedic. You pretend you didn't love it, but you loved it. As you work, a quirky tidbit pops into your mind. Some ancient families added fruit like Korean pear or jujube to early kimchi for sweetness or good fortune. Others slipped tiny carved wooden talismans into the crock, believing they encouraged friendly bacteria. Whether the wood did anything scientifically is debatable, but culturally, it made every jar feel like a guardian spirit had been assigned to it. You whisper to your jar, "Hey, if you want to ferment extra nicely, I won't complain." The aunties nod approvingly. They have definitely done the same. You continue layering cabbage, pressing, folding, and smoothing. Your hands move in a rhythm that feels older than speech. The warmth of the kitchen wraps around you. Outside, sunlight filters through paper windows, casting soft golden stripes that stretch across your workspace like gentle encouragement. Halfway through preparing the batch, an elder auntie joins you. leaning heavily on her stick. She lifts a leaf, sniffs it delicately, and hums. Good, she murmurs. Not too salty, not too soft. The ancestors would approve. You beam, which she pretends not to notice. She settles beside you and begins telling a story about winter. In the old days, a winter so fierce the river froze thick enough to walk across, and the only bright flavor in the long cold months was early kimchi stored in jars buried underground. We dug through the snow for it, she says. Some girls cried with happiness at the first taste. She chuckles. Others cried because they didn't dig deep enough, and the kimchi was still sleeping. Historians still argue whether underground storage pits Jangdokdae were strictly for temperature control, or if the spiritual aspect mattered more. Some records claim the earth kept kimchi calm, others say spirits protected the jars. The truth is likely both. Humans often do practical things for mystical reasons. You lift a nearly full crock and feel its weight so much heavier than the raw ingredients had been, as though fermentation has already begun, even though you know the real magic will take time. One auntie opens the window, letting a breeze sweep through. It carries the smell of pine, the hum of insects, the distant crackle of someone starting a cook fire. You breathe in deeply. Everything feels connected. The land, the jars, the flavors growing quietly in dark places. You press the final portion of cabbage into place, smoothing the surface like tucking in a blanket. The auntie hands you a large leaf. For the top, she says. You lay it flat, sealing the mixture beneath it. Then she hands you a stone, a small one, smooth, warm from her palm. Wait, she explains, so your kimchi doesn't float away. You nearly ask where it would float to, but you stop yourself. The answer is probably, don't ask silly questions. You place the stone gently onto the top leaf and close the crock with its lid. A soft click echoes through the room as clay meets clay. It sounds final yet hopeful, like closing the cover of a book you know will be better when you open it again later. An auntie taps the lid twice, same ritual as yesterday. Sleep, she whispers to the jar. Dream your flavors. You sit back on your heels, your hands tingling from garlic and brine. You watch the crock, peaceful in the morning light. Bubbles won't rise for days, but you already feel the anticipation building, tiny as distant footsteps. In this moment, you understand something simple and profound. Kimchi isn't made quickly. It blossoms. It deepens. It becomes. And now you're part of that, becoming your hands, joining countless others across time, gently coaxing vegetables toward transformation. As the aunties shuffle off to prepare the next task, you stay for just a moment longer, palm resting lightly on the warm clay lid. Your jar is sleeping, and soon, it will start to dream. You step outside with the crock still tingling in your palms, letting the village breeze cool your garlic-stained fingers. The morning has shifted again, lighter, warmer, with a faint bite of spice drifting somewhere in the air. It's subtle at first, like a whisper brushing past your cheek, but then the breeze shifts, and you catch it fully, a warm, peppery scent that makes your nose prickle and your eyebrows lift. One auntie sniffs the air dramatically. They're roasting gochu again, she mutters, already annoyed that someone out there is having fun without her. You blink. Gochu? Chili peppers? But you're standing in ancient Korea at a time before most households knew the meaning of fiery red kimchi. Auntie gives you a look that says, "Come on, you know what to do," and you follow her down a narrow dirt path toward the outskirts of the village. The path leads you past fields of sesame and millet, glistening from morning dew. Farmers wave lazily, too comfortable in the gentle sun to lift their arms higher than necessary. You pass a row of ongi jars, perched like loyal dogs guarding each household. Some lids rattle faintly, touched by fermentation's impatient bubbling. Then, as you reach the older houses near the hillside, Heat rolls toward you in a glowing wave. Smoke curls up from stone hearths, where red peppers lie split open and drying, their insides blazing like tiny suns. The sight makes your eyes widen. The aunties stand proudly beside the racks of peppers, arms crossed like they invented chili themselves. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. Chili peppers arrived in Korea during the late 16th century, likely through trade routes or maritime exchanges, after their spread from the Americas. Before that, Korean cuisine was aromatic, salty, fermented, and rich but not spicy. The arrival of gochu altered everything, especially kimchi, transforming it from pale, briny vegetables into the fiery red icon recognized around the world. You step closer to the drying racks, the heat teasing your cheeks. A young boy hands you a pepper. "Careful," he says. "If you touch your eyes after this, you will see your ancestors." You believe him wholeheartedly. The peppers are smooth, glossy, and warm from the sun. You roll one between your fingers. It feels like holding a spark. Nearby, women crush dried peppers into powder, using large wooden mortars. Thud, thud, thud. The sound echoes like distant drums. Each rhythmic strike releases a burst of red dust that floats gently in the air before settling onto aprons, hair, and unsuspecting apprentices. One boy sneezes so violently he startles a chicken. "Bless you," someone murmurs. "Wear a scarf next time," someone else adds. You kneel beside one of the mortars. A woman gestures for you to try. You lift the heavy pestle, far heavier than expected, and drive it downward. A sharp cloud of chili dust puffs upward into your face, and instantly your nose tingles, your eyes water, and your brain reboots. The woman pats your back. "Good, that means it's fresh." Through watery eyes, you watch the bright red powder accumulate, glowing like embers. The scent is rich, smoky, fruity, and dangerous all at once. A quirky tidbit floats into memory. Early Korean households didn't just use chili for food. They sometimes powdered it for medicine, hung whole peppers above doorways for protection, or rubbed them on tools to wake the metal. One not-so-documented rumor claims a mischievous villager once used chili to stop a neighbor from snoring. It did not work. It did, however, make the neighbor move. You help sift the crushed powder into a wide bamboo tray, spreading it thin so the sun can finish drying it. The heat warms your hands as you work, and a strange satisfaction settles over you. This is the birth of the red color you've seen countless times, but now you're watching it emerge from sunlight, labor, and laughter. A group of older women gather around, whispering excitedly. They discuss the arrival of these peppers like gossip about a new neighbor with questionable morals, but excellent fashion sense. "Are they safe?" one asks. "Probably not," another replies. "Do they taste good?" "Oh, absolutely." "Then, we keep them." Historians still argue whether Chile's explosive takeover of Korean cuisine happened rapidly or gradually. Some believe people instantly embraced the heat. Others say it took generations for folks to move from curious to obsessed. Watching the aunties sprinkle pepper powder into brine jars with suspicious enthusiasm, you suspect the shift happened way faster than scholars think. One auntie hands you a bowl of early kimchi, pale, crisp, beautifully brined, and then sprinkles a pinch of the new chili powder over it. The color blooms instantly, a vivid red streak spreading like watercolor. She nudges the bowl toward you. "Try." You hesitate for half a second, then take a bite. It hits you softly at first, the tang of fermentation, the crunch of cabbage, the garlic and ginger singing backup vocals. Then the heat rises, warm and playful, curling across your tongue like a friendly dragon testing your courage. It's not overpowering, but awakening, bright, alive. Your eyes widen. Auntie smirks. "Told you." Suddenly, the idea of pale kimchi feels incomplete, like a story missing its most dramatic chapter. As you sit among the peppers, heat swirling around you. A deep understanding settles in your chest. This moment reshaped an entire culinary identity. Once chili entered the jars, the food and the culture shifted, became bolder, brighter, fiercer. You watch as the women mix chili powder into larger batches, stirring until cabbage turns the familiar shade of red that now defines kimchi. The air feels charged, humming with transformation. Even the jars seem to stand taller. The auntie nudges you gently. See? Even food changes with time. A warm breeze sweeps through, carrying pepper dust and sunlight over the hillside. The peppers sway, drying gently, glowing fiercely. And you, hands stained red and eyes still watering a little, realize you've just witnessed a revolution, quiet, sun-drenched, and spicy. You return to the heart of the village kitchen just as the afternoon sun stretches long golden fingers across the floorboards, warming every clay surface it touches. The door slides open with a soft wooden sigh, and instantly your senses pick up a trio of familiar scents: nutty, earthy, and deeply savory. They swirl together like a choir, humming three different notes that somehow form one perfect chord. You pause, letting the aroma settle into your lungs the way steam settles into the fabric of your clothes. The auntie, closest to the hearth, tilts her chin toward a line of earthen crocks, arranged with deliberate reverence. Today, she announces, you meet the three siblings. She taps each jar, as if introducing performers on stage. Doenjang, Ganjang, Gochujang. You bow slightly to the jars, because honestly, they've earned the respect. She hands you a small wooden ladle. We start with Doenjang soybean paste, the oldest, grumpiest sibling. You kneel beside the jar and lift the lid. A warm, earthy aroma rises out, rich, deep, and slightly funky in that comforting way that tells you flavor has been working very hard for a very long time. The paste inside is dense and brown, like clay that has spent years thinking philosophical thoughts. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. Korea's traditional jang, the fermented trio, has been part of Korean agriculture for over 2 millennia. Soybeans were prized not just for protein, but for their ability to transform into pastes and sauces that lasted through harsh winters. The production method was essentially the same in ancient times as it is today. Cook soybeans, mash them, shape them into blocks called meju, dry them, then ferment them in ongi jars until the beans turn into magic. You dip the ladle in and scoop out a bit. It's thick, textured, and fragrant with a kind of savory confidence. The auntie gestures for you to taste it. You do hesitantly. The flavor hits like a warm handshake from an elder who has survived everything and still gets up before dawn. It's salty, earthy, slightly bitter, and incredibly grounding. You can imagine it enriching stews, broths, and souls. Strong, yes? She asks. You nod. Strong enough to give advice. She grins. She takes you next to the ganjang jar, the soy sauce sibling. The lid creaks open, releasing a rich, liquid aroma that makes your mouth water. The surface of the sauce glistens dark and glossy, reflecting a ripple of light like a tiny shadowed pond. When you dip the ladle in, the liquid pours out smoother than ink. You taste a drop. It's salty but layered, with a sweetness that flickers at the edges. You can feel centuries of household meals tucked inside that single sip. A young apprentice wanders by just in time to see your reaction. Careful, he warns dramatically. If you drink too much ganjang straight, your ancestors will complain you're wasting it. He's probably joking. Probably. Then it's time for the youngest sibling, gochujang. The jar is heavier somehow, like it carries stories that are spicy enough to scorch gossip before it spreads. The auntie lifts the lid, revealing a deep red paste so glossy it looks like it was polished by mischievous spirits. The aroma strikes you next, sweet, spicy, and slightly fermented, like sugar and fire had a very passionate conversation. You dip a finger in the paste. It's thick and sticky, clinging like syrup with ambition. The taste starts sweet molasses-like, then blooms into heat, followed by a savory depth that makes your eyebrows briefly attempt to leave your face. Good, the auntie says proudly. He likes you. You are 95% sure she means the sauce, but you don't question it. A quirky tidbit drifts through your memory. Some rural households once believed that a batch of gochujang could absorb the personality of the household matriarch. If she was stern, the paste fermented strong and spicy. If she was gentle, the paste came out sweeter. Was it superstition? Absolutely. Did families fiercely argue about whose gochujang had the best temperament? Also absolutely. You look at the bright red paste. It definitely has opinions. The auntie motions for you to follow her to the outdoor platform where long ropes of dried mayu blocks hang overhead like rows of earthy lanterns. Their surfaces are cracked and mottled, textured like the face of an elderly mountain. These blocks are the heart and backbone of the Jiang family. She lifts one to your nose. It smells like roasted beans, hay, and sun-baked stone, the perfect foundation for transformation. This is where everything begins, she says softly. Soybeans, air, time, and care. Historians still argue whether mayu originated independently in Korea or traveled through ancient trade routes from China. Some evidence points to local innovation, others to shared fermentation practices across East Asia. But the auntie waves off the debate with a flick of her hand. Who cares who started it? She says. We perfected it. You cannot argue with that confidence. She leads you next to the mixing table, where large bowls of barley flour, chili flakes, fermented soybean mash, and syrupy rice malt sit waiting. She gestures for you to stir. The mixture resists at first, dense, sticky, stubborn, but eventually yields. You fold and press until the ingredients fuse into a paste with a color reminiscent of molten sunset. Your arms ache. The auntie nods approvingly. Good. If your arms don't hurt, you're doing it wrong. Once the paste is ready, you help her pack it into a newly cleaned ongi jar. You press it down firmly, the surface smoothing like a red mirror. She places a circle of rice, straw on top, so it breathes nicely, and seals it with a cloth. Sunlight warms the jar. A faint breeze slips between the clay and the cloth lid. The jar seems to hum, just barely, as if the paste inside is stretching awake. You kneel beside the 3 Jiang jars, each one brimming with character, each one carrying a different layer of Korean culinary soul. Doenjang earthy wisdom, Ganjang salty clarity, Gochujang fiery sweetness. The auntie places a hand on your shoulder. Learn these, she says softly, and you learn Korea. The jars gleam in the sunlight, quietly alive, patiently transforming. You rest your palm on the warm clay, feeling a gentle vibration beneath. 3 siblings, 3 stories, 3 flavors that shaped a nation. And you, finally, are learning to speak their language. You step back out into the courtyard, blinking gently as sunlight washes across rows of ongi jars, arranged like a terracotta galaxy round. Humble, alive in a way you can feel more than see. The afternoon warmth rests softly on your skin, but the air carries that familiar undertone of fermentation. Earthy, savory, whispering from inside each vessel, as though the jars are murmuring old folk songs under their breath. You walk closer, drawn by a kind of gravitational pull, and place your fingertips on the nearest jar. The clay is warm, almost pulsing, almost breathing. An auntie materializes beside you. She has a talent for appearing exactly when you start having existential thoughts about pottery. She taps the jar lightly. Tok, tok. You feel it? She asks. Ongi is not decoration, it's alive. The jars breathe with your food. You nod, though inside you're thinking, is she implying the jars have lungs? Because I am not emotionally prepared for that twist tonight. She guides your hand to a different jar, one slightly older, with a deeper glaze and tiny pores dotting its surface like constellations. The jar feels cooler than the last. It's breathing slower somehow. This one is for kimchi, she explains. She prefers to inhale slowly. Yes, she said she. Ongi jars in this village apparently have pronouns, schedules, and frankly better emotional regulation than most humans. A mainstream historical fact swirls gently into your thoughts. Ongi clay is distinctively porous, allowing controlled air exchange while preventing harmful microbes from taking over. This micro-oxygen flow is one reason Korean fermented foods develop such deep flavor. It's ancient science disguised as folk wisdom. You lower your ear to the side of a jar, half expecting to hear tiny fermentation sprites having a team meeting inside. Instead, you hear a faint pop, 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 little gas bubbles rising in kimchi or doenjang. Quiet, patient, busy, Auntie grins. They're talking. You accept this. She leads you along the rows, each jar wearing a cloth cap tied with care. Some caps are fresh white cotton, others are dyed with tea, soot, or onion skins. Practicality turned accidental artistry. The jars vary in size from tiny pickling crocks to large vessels taller than your knee, used for jang or kimchi batches, meant to last entire seasons. As you walk, a quirky tidbit springs up. Some old households believed ongi jars had personalities based on the clay source and sun exposure. A jar baked near a riverbank was said to be gentle. One fired atop a windy mountain kiln was fiery. People would assign foods accordingly. Gentle jars for kimchi, fiery jars for gochujang, stubborn jars for the jiotgal that needed extra persuasion. Ahead, a middle-aged auntie crouches beside a jar, her ear pressed against it, as though listening to gossip from a close friend. After a moment she stands, unimpressed. This one is lazy today, she declares. I'll scold her later. She gives the jar a stern pat. The jar accepts the shame silently. You crouch down, testing the air above another jar's lid. It's warmer, just a whisper, but noticeable. The fermentation inside is waking, stretching, rearranging flavors like a sleepy chef. You lift the corner of its cloth and catch a whiff, sharp, sour sweet, faintly fizzy. You blink. It smells like it has opinions. Auntie beams. Of course, ongi helps it speak. The jars line the courtyard in gentle arcs, spaced just far enough apart so air can circulate like a soft breeze through a forest of clay. You walk between them slowly, careful not to bump anything. The sun glints on their rounded shoulders. Some jars have decorative rings, others wear simple vertical ridges that look like the potter's fingerprints, frozen in time. Near the end of the row, you find a jar decorated with tiny carved petals that resemble spring blossoms. An older auntie notices your interest and shuffles over. Ah, she sighs, touching the jar fondly. That one is from my mother's 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 time. She traces the carvings. This ongi has seen more winters than any of us. Historians still argue whether certain patterns on ongi jars held symbolic purpose, prosperity, good harvest, harmony, or if potters simply liked making things pretty. The debate continues because villagers respond to academic questions with phrases like, maybe yes, maybe no, depends on the jar's mood. The sun dips a bit lower, warming the jars evenly. You watch as the light softens across their curved surfaces, turning each one into a tiny glowing ember. The courtyard feels like a heartbeat, steady, grounding, ancient. A novice apprentice jogs up with a bamboo ladle and shouts, "Time to burp the kimchi!" The aunties immediately scold him for yelling near fermenting jars. "They don't like loud boys," one mutters. You help lift a lid on a kimchi jar, and a quick release of gas escapes with a tiny sipst, like the jar has been holding in a secret all day. The aroma hits you, sour, spicy, vibrant, alive. The auntie nods. Good. She's happy. You replace the lid gently, feeling a strange camaraderie with the jar now. As the afternoon breeze flows again, you notice something beautiful. The jar's breathing synchronizes with the rhythm of the wind. When the breeze slows, fermentation bubbles seem quieter. When the breeze picks up, you hear faint gurgles and pops. Ongi is a technology built from earth and intuition, perfectly tuned to its environment. You walk a slow circle through the courtyard, absorbing the hum of time. The jars stand like guardians, not loud, not demanding, simply existing with purpose. Fermentation doesn't rush, it doesn't panic, it doesn't shout, it transforms in silence. You place a hand on one jar, feeling warmth radiate into your palm. The sensation travels lightly up your arm, calming your breath. These jars hold more than food. They hold patience, memory, a rhythm older than language. And standing among them, you feel yourself fermenting a little too slowly, quietly, into someone who understands the magic of waiting. You linger in the courtyard a little longer, letting the warmth of the ongi jars fade gently from your palms, before a familiar voice calls you from the far side of the house. It's one of the aunties, the one with the loud laugh and the sharper-than-average elbows, waving you over with the urgency of someone who has just remembered a delicious secret. You follow her past the kitchen door, past the herb-drying racks, and toward a wide clearing where woven mats stretch across the ground like a patchwork quilt of sunlight. Today is communal prep day, and you've walked directly into its heart. Women from around the village have gathered, sleeves rolled high, hands already busy peeling radishes, slicing cabbages, rinsing green onions, measuring salt, and whispering gossip with the precision of seasoned artisans. The energy is different here. Not rushed, not chaotic, just comfortably alive. Like the murmuring of a warm river, you step onto one of the mats, and immediately someone hands you a knife. "Chop," she commands, then softens. "Please," she adds belatedly. You accept the knife with a level of seriousness that surprises even you. A large basin of radishes sits before you, their pale green tops crisp, their white bodies cold to the touch. You slice one tock, 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 and the sound blends into the rhythmic chorus of knives hitting cutting boards all around you. It's oddly soothing. ASMR before microphones existed. The radish scent cuts through the air, sharp and refreshing, like the culinary equivalent of a cold splash of water on a sleepy morning. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. In early Korean communities, food preservation, especially kimchi making, was a communal ritual. Women gathered seasonally to prepare ingredients, share labor, swap stories, and reinforce social bonds. These gatherings weren't merely about food. They were an essential part of cultural continuity and survival. You look up. That fact is alive in every corner of the clearing. Over near the water jars, two aunties are arguing about how finely to chop garlic. "Smaller," one insists. "Bigger," the other counters. You think they may have been having this same debate since the Goryeo dynasty. Closer to you, a group of younger women are teasing an apprentice who is salting cabbage with the determination of someone trying to erase the cabbage from existence. "Not so much," they shout. "Unless you want to turn it into a salt sculpture." The boy blushes and adjusts his technique, mumbling apologies to the cabbage. An older auntie plops herself down beside you, her knees cracking like ancient doors. She glances at your pile of radishes. "Not bad," she says, "for someone with hands that look like they've never carried firewood." You blush. She grins. It's affectionate teasing villager initiation rites. You keep chopping, letting your movements fall into an easy rhythm. A gust of wind sends a flutter through the drying pepper threads overhead. Shadows dance across the mats. Somewhere to the left, a woman begins humming, a steady tune, old, low, rhythmic. Others join in one by one, layering harmonies, until the whole clearing sounds like a lullaby being sung to the vegetables. You don't know the words, but you recognize the meaning. Keep going. Stay steady. We're in this together. A quirky tidbit sprouts in your thoughts. In some villages, women believed their emotional state affected fermentation. If someone was angry or heartbroken during prep, older women would gently send her home, whispering that kimchi made with a troubled heart might ferment too fiercely or turn sour before its time. Whether true or not, it ensured that communal food was born from communal care. You watch the aunties work, and the truth of that belief feels deeper than science. You help massage salted cabbage next, pressing and folding the leaves until they soften and release their crispness into briny pools. The texture changes quickly, under your fingers firm at first, then pliant, then silky. Salt water drips from your wrists and elbows. You feel like a sculptor coaxing life into clay. Massage it like it owes you money, one auntie advises. No, massage it like it's been through something, another corrects. A third waves them off. Just massage it like you're hungry. That last one resonates deeply. Next comes the mixing of aromatics. Mounds of garlic, ginger, green onions, radish matchsticks, pear slices, and pepper flakes are piled on a massive wooden board. The colors alone look like a celebration. White, green, ruby red, gold. You help toss them together, and the fragrance rises in waves. Savory heat from gochu, sweet perfume from pears, bright crispness from scallions. The mixture feels alive beneath your stirring hands. Women chatter around you. So-and-so's daughter got engaged. So-and-so's son hasn't cut his hair in 3 months. Your cousin said he saw a fox spirit near the pine grove again. The fox spirit said he saw your cousin first. You nearly drop your handful of scallions from laughing. Historians still argue whether these communal gatherings were primarily social, ritualistic, or practical. But watching laughter ripple through the group, seeing hands help each other without hesitation, hearing songs rise and fall like breath, it's obvious the answer is all three. Culture, memory, and family are kneaded into the food as surely as salt. You begin packing a batch of kimchi into a waiting jar, pressing each layer carefully so that no air pockets remain. An auntie adjusts your hand placement, another corrects your wrist angle. A third silently rotates the jar because apparently you were packing it in the wrong quadrant of the universe. You submit to the hive mind. They are experts. The jar is in good hands, just not yours. When the jar is full, the aunties collectively nod. Approval feels like sunlight. You set the jar aside to ferment, its lid wrapped with clean cloth, its contents settling with gentle acceptance. As the day winds down, the mats are covered with finished batches, half-finished vegetables, drying herbs, empty bowls, and footprints made by people who worked side by side for hours. The sun dips low, painting the clearing in warm amber. The women stretch their backs, wipe their hands, share cups of barley tea, and settle into the soft glow of satisfaction. You sit among them, tired, but content, feeling like you've been folded into something ancient and important. Here, in the web of hands, voices, and jars, you understand the secret truth. Fermentation is never a solitary act. It is born from community, shaped by shared labor, seasoned by laughter and breath. And as you lean back, muscles humming, the jars in the courtyard seem to hum with you, quietly echoing the day's warmth. As twilight begins smoothing its indigo brush across the rooftops, one of the aunties nudges you with her elbow gently, but with the universal auntie meaning of, "Get up, we're not done yet." She hands you a bundle of thick hemp cloth and gestures toward the path leading out of the courtyard. "Come," she says, "it's time you learned the real rhythm of the year." You follow her down the narrow stone walkway, past the last row of ongi jars now glowing softly under lamplight. The air has shifted. The afternoon warmth has dissolved into something crisp and expectant, the kind of evening that makes you pull your sleeves down and hug yourself instinctively. A thin mist curls along the village edges, where fields stretch into shadow. You've learned how to start ferments, the auntie says. But survival wasn't about mornings like these. She tosses you the cloth bundle. It was about seasons that tried to break us. You walk beside her toward a storage hut, built partly into the earth, half basement, half bunker, all business. Inside, a cool wave of underground air rolls up to meet you, smelling faintly of clay, dried grains, and the patient musk of vegetables sleeping in their brine. Crops, crocks, and ropes of drying herbs line the walls. This place feels less like a pantry and more like a winter fortress. A mainstream historical fact rises naturally in your mind. Traditional Korean households prepared for brutally cold winters and scorching, monsoon-filled summers by managing food stores months in advance. Fermentation wasn't just culinary creativity, it was insurance, strategy, survival. When rivers froze solid or summer rot threatened fresh produce, the jars and dried goods carried families through. You feel that truth settling around you like an extra blanket. The auntie kneels beside a buried ongi jar and gently brushes away dirt from its lid. This one holds last year's winter kimchi. She lifts the lid a fraction, releasing a breath of sour, tangy aroma that curls into the air like a ghost with good intentions. We kept it cold, deep in the ground, so the flavor grew slow and steady. She hands you a tasting spoon. You hesitate mainly because your brain is still processing the idea of aromas behaving like ghosts, but you taste it anyway. Oh wow. It's sharp, deep, a little fizzy, a little sweet, like the cabbage survived winter, wrote poetry about it, and is now letting you read its emotional journal. Good, right? The auntie says, smugness radiating from her like steam. You nod fervently. Next, she hands you another jar, this one sealed tightly and warm, despite the cold room. Summer doenjang, she explains. Fermented fast, too fast sometimes. She thumps the side of the jar. The heat makes them stubborn. We watch them every day to be sure they don't boil. You raise an eyebrow. Boil. From the inside. Oh yes, she says cheerfully. Summer weather turns fermentation into mischief. A quirky tidbit bubbles up in your memory. Some villages believed that particularly hot summers encouraged fermentation spirits to get rowdy. To calm the jars, they would tie ribbons or charms around them, or even whisper soothing words. Whether it worked scientifically is doubtful. Whether it was adorable, absolutely. You follow her back outside, where the last hints of sunset glow on the mountains. A cicada buzz trembles faintly in the distance. Come, she says. We check the hillside storage too. You walk upward, along a narrow dirt path, lantern in hand. Shadows lengthen around you, stretching across stones and roots. The air cools with every step. When you reach a flattened section of hillside, you find several pits covered with wooden planks and weighted stones. This is for summer, she explains. Cool earth keeps things from spoiling. She lifts a plank, revealing jars nestled like eggs in soil. Radish water kimchi, cucumber brines, spring greens we saved before the heat turned mean. You crouch beside one jar, marveling at how perfectly the earth cradles it. It feels protected, you whisper. Yes, the auntie folds her arms. People forget, the earth ferments with us. We trust it. It trusts us. As you replace the wooden cover, a soft wind sweeps across the hillside, carrying the first real chill of the evening. You shiver involuntarily. She notices. Winter demands kimchi. Summer demands jiotgal. Fall demands drying. She looks at you. Spring demands everything else. The seasons suddenly feel like four large teachers with very different teaching styles. You walk back toward the village, lantern light swaying at your side. The auntie continues, her voice blending with the evening air. In winter, The jars sleep deeply. In summer, they fight. In winter, we dig them out. In summer, we bury them again. The next morning, you wake to the sound of hooves, slow, steady, rhythmically thudding against packed dirt. It's not the frantic pacing of livestock, but the purposeful steps of animals preparing for travel. You stretch, rub your eyes, and slide open the door to find a small caravan gathering in the village square. Wooden carts, bundles wrapped in hemp rope, earthen jars padded with straw, and merchants adjusting their hats in that weary yet excited way of people who know the road will test them, but also reward them. An auntie waves you over with a grin that says you have no idea what's coming. Today, she announces, you learn how our food travels farther than we do. You join a merchant who's loading a set of ongi jars onto his cart, carefully, reverently, as though each jar contains a tiny god with fragile feelings. The jars are swaddled in straw mats and padded with dried reeds. The merchant gives one jar a gentle shake. It releases a faint slosh. Soy sauce, he says, for the next province over. Their sauce tastes like sadness, so they pay well for ours. You nod politely, unsure whether that's a culinary critique or a political insult. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. Fermentation made long-distance travel possible in ancient Korea. Merchants, monks, and messengers relied on fermented foods, kimchi, jeotgal, jang, to survive journeys over mountains, across rivers, and through dense forests. These foods didn't just resist spoilage. They improved with time, becoming deeper, richer, more reliable companions. The merchant hands you a small bundle of dried radish kimchi wrapped in cloth. For your pocket, he says. Road snack. The radish is firm, salty, slightly chewy like a sour candy that has spent decades developing personality. You tuck it into your sleeve gratefully. A young man brings over a jar half filled with jeotgal. The smell hits you instantly intense, oceanic, authoritative. The merchant laughs at your expression. Jeotgal doesn't spoil, he explains. It just gains confidence. You help lash the jars to the cart, tying knots that must withstand bumpy roads, sharp turns, curious animals, and nosy spirits. A few villagers gather to see the caravan off, offering last-minute advice. Don't drop the jars. Don't talk to fox spirits after sunset. Don't eat all your radish snacks before noon. All equally important notes, you assume. You climb onto the rear of the cart, settling among bundles of herbs and sacks of dried anchovies. The oxen snort gently and begin their slow march down the road. The wheels creak, the cart sways, and the jars beneath you thrum with tiny vibrations like the quiet purring of clay cats. As the village fades behind you, the road opens into rolling hills. Morning sunlight spills across the fields, warming your face. Birds swoop overhead. The wind carries hints of pine, river water, and the faintest scent of the coast. The merchant hands you a small wooden spoon. Taste, he says, offering a jar. You hesitate, then dip the spoon into a thick, dark liquid, ganjang, softer than the batch you tried earlier, saltier too. It lingers on your tongue like a deep note in a song. We sell different flavors to different towns, he explains. Some like mild, some like bold, some pretend they know what they're tasting. He shrugs. We let them pretend. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. On long trips, some merchants believe jang jars acted as protective charms. If a jar cracked, it was said to have taken a spiritual hit meant for the travelers. Whether true or not, merchants mourned broken jars like fallen comrades. You glance at the jars riding beside you. They do look loyal, slightly judgmental, but loyal. The road grows rockier as the caravan climbs into the foothills. Trees close in overhead, their branches weaving shadows that dance across the cart. The jars rattle softly. The merchant pats them. Easy, he murmurs. The mountain moves only if it feels like it. Hours pass. The oxen grunt. The wheels complain. You chew your dried radish snack exactly too early, violating the villager's advice. It tastes better on the road, sharper, more necessary. When you cross a narrow wooden bridge, you hear water rushing beneath you. The merchant stops the oxen and signals for a break. He leads you to a smooth rock by the river. From a bundle wrapped in oilcloth, he pulls out a small container of fermented soybean paste, doenjang. With his knife, he spreads a bit onto leaves of fresh wild greens gathered nearby. "Eat," he says. You bite into the makeshift wrap. The greens are crisp, watery, vibrant. The doenjang is deep, grounding. Together they taste like the road and the earth shaking hands. "Travel food," he says proudly. "Stronger flavor, stronger body." You continue onward, the jars now warmed by midday sun. Some lids let out tiny puffs of fermentation, gas quiet, contented sighs. One jar pops loudly, startling the oxen. The merchant laughs. She's excited. By late afternoon, you stop at a trading post, a scattering of houses, a small market square, and a communal fire pit where travelers share news. Merchants open the jars, letting buyers taste the goods. You watch people sip soy sauce, nibble jokgal, smell gochujang with narrowed eyes. Some nod approvingly, some negotiate aggressively, some try to appear unimpressed but fail when the flavor hits them. Historians still argue whether ancient Korean trade routes were primarily for goods or for culture. But here, watching strangers bond over fermented flavors older than family names, you see that the answer was always both. As the sun sinks behind the hills, the caravan prepares to sleep. Jars are tucked beneath thick blankets to prevent nighttime chill. Oxen settle into grass. Merchants warm rice cakes over the fire. You sit with your back against a jar, one filled with kimchi that has been slowly fermenting throughout the day, stirred by the road's vibrations. It smells slightly stronger now, bolder, like it has something new to say. The merchant leans beside you, poking the fire. "Food changes on the road," he says. "So do people." You nod, feeling the truth of it. Today, your understanding of fermentation expanded beyond kitchens and courtyards. Now it stretches across mountains and rivers, tucked inside jostling jars, carried by people who rely on preserved flavors to keep moving forward. You breathe in the smoky night, the tang of traveling kimchi, the warmth of the fire. The jars around you settle into silence, the kind of silence that means they're working, transforming, strengthening, improving with every mile. And as you drift into sleep beside them, you realize you're changing too. You wake before dawn, the world still painted in shades of blue so soft they feel like whispers against your skin. The embers in last night's fire glow faintly as the merchant nudges you. "Up," he murmurs. Your journey continues. You rise, brush straw from your clothes, and stretch your spine until it pops like a jar lid releasing pressure. The caravan prepares to head back toward the village, but the merchant gestures down a different fork in the road, toward a path lined with tall pines and stone markers. "You aren't coming with us," he says. "You're going someplace. Fancier." Which is how, an hour later, you find yourself approaching the sweeping gates of a Joseon palace kitchen, a sprawling complex humming with early morning purpose. Steam rises in soft white ribbons from massive cauldrons. Servants hurry across the stone courtyard carrying trays of vegetables, baskets of rice, and bundles of herbs. The palace walls glow faintly with the first hints of sunrise. A palace attendant greets you with a bow and ushers you in with all the ceremony of someone handling a guest who may or may not faint from intimidation. "Welcome," she says, "to the royal kitchens. Step carefully. Don't touch anything unless someone tells you to, especially jars, especially knives, especially..." You nod quickly. Message received. You will touch nothing unless explicitly instructed. The kitchen interior is vast, larger than any village kitchen you've seen. Rows of stone hearths line the walls. Wooden beams overhead hold bunches of drying herbs and peppers. Clay and brass pots glimmer like jewels in the firelight. There's a rhythm here, but it's sharper than in the village, less gossip, more precision. People move like they're part of a choreographed dance, because when the king might taste your dish, there is no room for close enough. A mainstream historical fact settles into your thoughts. Palace kitchens in the Joseon era maintained strict hierarchies and specialized roles. Royal meals followed seasonal, medicinal, and symbolic guidelines. Fermented foods, jang, kimchi, jeotgal, were prepared with extraordinary care, sometimes months or years in advance, because even slight differences in salt concentration or fermentation time could shift the entire flavor profile. A stern-looking court lady approaches you. She sizes you up the way a falcon assesses a bewildered mouse. "You will help with the kimchi today," she says. The king prefers mild heat, layered aromatics, and crisp textures. She pauses. Do not disappoint him. You swallow hard. The stakes have escalated dramatically. She leads you to a long table where several palace cooks are preparing ingredients with terrifying speed. Knives slice through greens so quickly they barely make a sound. Piles of cabbage leaves lie in perfect symmetry. Bowls of aromatics are arranged with military precision. A huge ongi jar sits at the end of the table, already filled halfway with brined vegetables. Auntie energy does not exist here, only seriousness. One cook hands you a bowl of seasoning paste. It's paler than village kimchi, paste less chili, more pear, ginger, and pine nut. You breathe it in. The aroma is elegant, delicate, composed. No chaos, no rough edges. The kind of paste that knows it's destined for royal taste buds. You begin spreading the mixture across cabbage leaves, mindful of every stroke. A court lady hovers behind you, watching like a hawk guarding her fledglings. "Even pressure," she murmurs. "Don't tear the leaves, and fold from the base, not the tip." You adjust. She nods, just barely. Acceptable. Your confidence increases by 2.3%. Nearby, a cook is preparing baked kimchi, white kimchi, without chili. The ingredients look like something from a painting. Pine nuts, jujube slices, chestnut slivers, fragrant herbs, delicately cut vegetables. The brine is clear, almost musical in scent. This kimchi isn't meant to shout or sting. It's meant to whisper sophistication. A quirky tidbit returns to you. Some palace records suggest that kimchi destined for royalty underwent multiple tastings by court ladies before reaching the king. If a batch fermented too vigorously or leaned too sour, it was repurposed for servants or used in cooking. The king, apparently, had the palate of someone who expected his kimchi to behave flawlessly, like a well-trained court scholar. You glance at the jars. They look like they're standing at attention. You're assigned to help prepare dongchimi, a radish water kimchi prized in winter for its refreshing clarity. The radishes are carved into near-perfect cylinders. The water is filtered through fine cloth 3 times. The pears are sliced so thin you can almost see the morning light shine through them. You gently place the ingredients into a pristine jar, adding garlic, ginger, and a small strip of green pepper for fragrance. The court lady lifts the jar, inspects it, and nods. Good. She seals it with cloth and ties it with a silk ribbon. A silk ribbon. That's how you know this kimchi is royalty. The next station is even more intimidating. Gochujang, for medicinal use. Palace kitchens often prepared jang strategically, depending on the king's health needs. You watch as a cook stirs a pot of rich red paste, murmuring under her breath as though reciting a spell. She gestures for you to add barley malt. You pour slowly. She nods approvingly. your confidence increases by an additional 1%. Historians still argue whether the palace truly produced superior Jiang, or whether villagers unburdened by strict protocol made deeper, more soulful flavors. Palace cooks followed rules. Village cooks followed instinct. The debate is eternal. Watching this kitchen work, though, you see the beauty in its discipline. Flavors honed like calligraphy strokes. Just when you think you've survived the intensity of palace food preparation, a court lady hands you a lacquered tray. "Bring this to the fermentation terrace," she says. "And do not trip. Your soul leaves your body momentarily." You carry the tray carefully, slow, steady steps past bustling hearths and out into a courtyard reserved solely for fermenting jars. Rows of polished ongi sit on raised platforms, each marked with silk tags, indicating its contents and purpose. This is where flavors mature peacefully under sunlight, breeze, and meticulous supervision. A palace attendant approaches. "Place it there," she whispers, pointing to an open spot among the jars. You set the tray down, heart pounding, and step back. The jars glow gently in the morning light. You feel their calmness, their slow work, their ancient wisdom. The palace may demand perfection, but the jars only ask for patience. You breathe. The air smells like ginger, pine, clay, and quiet ambition. And in that serene moment, you understand why the royal kitchen treated fermentation not just as food, but as art. Transformation, after all, deserves respect. Section 11. You're still on the palace fermentation terrace, watching the jars bask like dignified little nobles in the morning light, when a new voice cuts through the gentle clatter of kitchen work. "You there," someone says, in a tone that suggests both authority and permanent sleep deprivation. You turn to find a court physician in simple robes, eyes sharp, hair tied back with the precision of someone who has never once misplaced a hairpin. He's holding a small scroll and a very serious expression. "You've worked with kimchi and Jiang?" he asks. You nod cautiously. "Good. Then you're coming with me. You really need to stop agreeing to things so quickly." He leads you along a covered corridor to a quieter annex of the palace kitchens. The mood here is different, less about pleasing the king's palate and more about appeasing his organs. Shelves line the walls with jars labeled in careful brushstrokes. Some hold dried roots and herbs. Others hold liquids so strange in color, they look like they might grant wishes or remove them. On a central table, a few ongi jars sit open, their scents mingling into a symphony of sour, salty, and sharply herbal. You recognize the base notes: kimchi brine, softened Jiang, a vinegar tang. But there's more here: licorice root, ginseng, jujube, perilla seeds, things that smell like they've seen your medical file and have opinions. The physician folds his arms. "Fermented foods keep bodies strong," he says. "We use them for more than taste." He gestures to the jars. "Today you learn how they heal, or at least how we try." A mainstream historical fact drifts gently into your thoughts. In traditional Korean medicine, fermented foods like kimchi, Jiang, and vinegar-based tonics were believed to support digestion, circulation, and overall balance. Texts from the Joseon period describe how certain ferments were prescribed seasonally, cooling radish brines in summer, warming soybean pastes in winter to align with the body's changing needs. The physician hands you a wooden ladle and points to a jar of radish water kimchi dongchimi, brewed specifically as a gentle winter remedy. Floating inside are radish pieces, thin slices of pear, slivers of green chili, and a few pale medicinal roots you don't quite recognize, but decide to politely trust. "Pour some into this bowl," he says. "This batch is for patients with weak appetite." You ladle the liquid out carefully. It's clear but faintly clouded, like moonlight caught in water. The scent is clean, crisp, faintly peppery. You take a sip. It tastes like waking up after a very long nap. Cool, light, quietly energizing. It doesn't punch. It persuades. The physician nods. The sourness wakes the stomach. The radish moves the chi. The ferment keeps it safe. He peers at you over the rim of his bowl. And if the patient still refuses to eat, we tell them the king likes it. That usually works. You try not to laugh, but it leaks out anyway. He leads you to another jar. This one is darker, thicker, smelling richly of doenjang and toasted barley. For fatigue, he explains. Farmers, soldiers, officials who pretend their work is harder than everyone else's. He dips a spoon in and holds it out. The paste glistens, dense and fragrant. You taste it and feel warmth spread instantly down your throat, into your chest, like a small, friendly furnace. Doenjang is strength, he says. Fermented beans carry the sun of last summer into this winter. He taps the jar. We mix it with hot water, herbs, sometimes garlic. Good for people who try to do too much. Which, yes, includes you. The physician moves to a smaller jar, tucked almost shyly in the corner. He lifts the lid, and a punchy, intense aroma springs out. Shrimp jotgal, fermented and fearless. Mixed into it are slivers of ginger and a hint of something bittersweet. This one, he says, is for the morning after celebrations. You blink. You mean hangovers? He sighs. Festive excess. Then, more quietly, yes, hangovers. A quirky tidbit surfaces immediately. In some records and oral traditions, fermented seafood like jiotgal was believed to steady the stomach and revive the blood after drinking, whether it helped by salt, umami, or pure psychological comfort. People swore by it. There are probably still ancestors somewhere nodding in approval. You help mix a small portion of the jiotgal with rice water and chopped green onion, creating a kind of proto-soup that smells surprisingly decent. If you ignore the part of your brain that's yelling, that's fermented shrimp for breakfast. The physician tastes it thoughtfully, then nods. It will do. The patient may not thank you, but they will live. That's a glowing review, honestly. He next leads you to a shelf where smaller jars sit, wrapped in cloth, each marked with neat ink. Autumn lungs, spring digestion, summer heat. Inside, fermented rice tonics and mild vinegars infused gently with herbs like tiny potions. In slow motion, you crack open a jar labeled for spring. The scent of rice vinegar, honey, and wild greens drifts up bright and sharp, yet soft around the edges. The physician explains, a little each day, to keep things moving. You don't ask which things specifically. You can guess. Historians still argue whether these health beliefs arose from empirical observation, people noticing they simply felt better with fermented foods, or from larger medical theories about balance, heat, and cold in the body. The truth is probably a patient blend of both. Data gathered by generations of grandmothers, filtered through the language of energy and seasons. The physician has you help pack a new batch of gentle kimchi for patients recovering from illness. The ingredients are mild: napa cabbage, a hint of pear, very little chili, more focus on ginger and scallion than heat. You massage the leaves with brine, feeling them soften in your fingertips, then tuck them delicately into a compact jar. Not too sour, he reminds you, not too salty. Their bodies are tired. They need kindness. You press the vegetables lightly so they sit comfortably beneath the brine, then cover the jar. It looks simple from the outside, but now you know its purpose is anything but. Across the room, a younger assistant is scribbling notes on a board. Patient, a weak appetite. Dong chimi brine. Patient B fatigue. Donjong tonic. Patient C after festival. Jiotgal soup. Lecture. You quietly add lecture in your head to the list of side effects. The physician gestures toward the whole room. Fermentation saves food, he says, but it also saves people. From hunger, from weakness, from long winters. He pauses, sometimes from their own bad decisions. You think about the traveling merchant with his road doonjang, the villagers pulling kimchi jars from snow, the aunties sending small bowls of sour soup to neighbors with colds. Patterns begin weaving together in your mind, threads of flavor, health, care, and time. A jar of kimchi isn't just a side dish. A crock of doenjang isn't just seasoning. A cup of fermented tonic isn't just something to gulp and forget. They're all quiet medicines, born in kitchens, refined by seasons, carried in jars that breathe. The physician hands you one last bowl, warm water whisked with a bit of softened doenjang, sliced green onion, and a splash of aged soy sauce. For you, he says, your hands have worked hard. Your body needs brine. You sip it slowly. It's savory, soft, deeply comforting. It tastes like everything you've learned in liquid form. You exhale, long and easy. Your gut microbes, if they could talk, would probably send you a thank you letter. And as you step back out into the courtyard, the air cool against your face, you realize that fermentation's story isn't only about survival or flavor. It's about tending the body as gently and patiently as you've been tending the jars. You step out of the palace's medicinal annex, feeling strangely fortified, like you've just consumed a semester's worth of ancient wellness wisdom in one bowl of salty comfort. The morning sun hangs higher now, warming the stone pathways and softening the edges of palace walls. You take a breath, expecting the familiar sense of jang and kimchi, but instead, something different drifts through the air. Sweetness, a hint of fruit, a whisper of funk. An attendant appears at your side like she's been waiting for your confusion to bloom. Ah, she says knowingly, you haven't met the other ferments. She gestures for you to follow. We keep them away from the royal jars. They're delicate. Delicate is not the word you'd choose for the scent currently elbowing its way into your nostrils, but you follow anyway. She leads you to a quieter courtyard shaded by persimmon trees, their branches hanging heavy with dried fruit that resemble small lanterns. Beneath the trees is a long table covered in jars of every shape and size, some tall and thin, some squat and wrinkled, some decorated with painted fish that stare at you with unsettling enthusiasm. These, she says, are the stranger ferments. You brace yourself. She removes the lid from the first jar, one filled to the brim with what looks like amber jelly. The smell rises gently, earthy and sweet, with the faintest tang. Fermented persimmon paste, she explains. Good for winter, good for throats, good for people who talk too much. She gives you a pointed look. You pretend not to notice. You dip a finger into the jelly. It's thick, sticky, and tastes like honeyed fruit that's decided to deepen into adulthood. Warm, soothing, round. You can imagine it being stirred into warm water, spread on rice cakes, or eaten secretly by palace attendants, hiding behind pillars. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. Persimmons have long been revered in Korea, eaten fresh, dried, or fermented. Old texts praise their ability to soothe digestion and sweeten harsh winters. Fermenting them concentrated their sugars and medicinal properties, nature's throat lozenges before the invention of candy. The attendant moves to the next jar with a more ominous expression. Brace, she warns. She lifts the lid. You immediately understand why. A sharp, oceanic, almost mischievous smell bursts free fermented fish sauce, but not the mild village kind. This one is pungent, assertive, and slightly threatening. If aromas had personalities, this one would be that relative who tells uncomfortable truths at dinner. Yeojojang, she says. Ancient fish sauce. Strong, yes? The scholars in the palace say it dates back centuries. She pauses. The cooks say it smells like regret. She offers you a tiny spoonful. You reconsider your life choices, but ultimately taste it. It's salty, rich, deeply umami, and far more delicious than its scent suggests. You cough once, out of respect. A quirky tidbit pops into your mind. Some old households believed that strong fish sauce could scare away evil spirits. If that's true, this jar could probably chase away a whole demon army. The attendant pats your back as your soul returns to your body. She moves to the next jar, a small stone vessel filled with something translucent and wobbling. Muqiao, she says softly. Jellied ferment. Rare. Only made by a few families. You peer inside. The jelly shimmers faintly, catching the sunlight. It's beautiful and terrifying, like alien dessert. Taste, she offers. You glance at her with betrayal-filled eyes. Oh, come on, she says. It's not poisonous. Much. You take the tiniest spoonful imaginable. It melts instantly on your tongue, cool, lightly sour, almost floral. Strange, but captivating. This, she explains, is made when starches ferment with herbs and a little fruit. Some families make it clear, some make it clouded, some insist theirs can predict weather. They say if the jelly wobbles too much, storms are coming. Historians still argue whether these jellied ferments counted as food, medicine, or seasonal treats. Records mention them sporadically, often in the margins, as if the writers weren't sure they wanted to admit they ate this stuff. But the jars still appear across regions, hinting at a quiet but persistent tradition. Next, she guides you to a series of small buckets covered with tightly woven baskets. These, she whispers dramatically, are the ferments we do not speak of. Your eyes widen. She lifts a basket. Inside is fermented garlic so black it looks like polished stones. The aroma is sweet, smoky, with a faint whisper of balsamic. You pop a piece into your mouth. It's chewy, rich, almost like candy made by a vampire chef. Oh, that one's pleasant, you say, relieved. She smiles wickedly. Try the next. The next basket holds something else. A dense mash of unidentified vegetables and herbs, smelling earthy with a little funk. Not bad, just mysterious. The flavor is mild, slightly salty, with a sweetness that sneaks up after you swallow. That one, she says, varies by region. Some say it was made for travelers. Others say monks used it during fasting. She leans closer. I think they just liked experimenting. At the end of the table sits a jar wrapped in red cloth. The attendant hesitates before touching it. This one, she says slowly, is very old. Fermented fruit wine left over from offerings. Sweet, but strong. She lifts the cloth and reveals a pale pink liquid. It smells like rosé that's lived through several reincarnations. She pours you a sip. It's floral, fizzy, slightly sour, and surprisingly smooth. You feel it warm your chest, shoulders, even your fingertips. The palace may not consider this an official ferment, but it holds more stories than half the court records. You look at the spread of jars before you. Persimmon pastes, fish sauces, herbal jellies, charcoal-colored garlic, ancient fruit wines. These aren't the celebrity ferments of Korean cuisine. They're the background dancers, the whispering ingredients, the seasonal oddities that rarely make it into textbooks but have seasoned real lives for centuries. The attendant folds her arms. Most people know kimchi. They know jang. But these, she gestures at the table, these are the quiet ones, the forgotten ones, the ones families kept because they brought comfort, or luck, or sweetness, or simply a good story. She lowers her voice conspiratorially. Some of these jars have been passed down for 5 generations. Others, we don't even know who made them first. They just appeared. You lean closer to a jar that definitely wasn't there a few seconds ago and decide not to question it. Historians still argue whether many of these ferments were regional specialities, medicinal concoctions, or experimental accidents. But as you taste, smell, and watch the sunlight dance across each jar, you sense the truth. Fermentation thrives wherever curiosity meets patience. Even the oddest jars hold love. Even the strangest flavors hold memory. You touch the lid of the persimmon paste jar, feeling its warmth. These are the hidden corners of Korean fermentation. Sweet, funky, mysterious, magical, and somehow, tasting them makes you feel like you've unlocked a secret pantry hidden behind the history books, one filled with quiet stories waiting in the dark, patiently fermenting into wisdom. You leave the courtyard of curious ferments with the distinct sensation that your taste buds are now certified adventurers, capable of handling anything short of literal dragons. The palace attendant waves you off, still chuckling at your fish sauce-induced spiritual journey, and you make your way down a long stone walkway lined with tall pines. Their needles whisper gently in the breeze, scattering soft shadows across your path. And then you see it. A sprawling marketplace unfolding beyond the palace walls, buzzing, bustling, overflowing with baskets, barrels, jars, and voices rising like warm steam. This isn't the calm, candlelit palace kitchen. This is the real world of fermentation on full display. No etiquette, no noble restraint, just pure, delicious chaos. You take a step inside, and the marketplace swallows you whole. Vendors shout in melodic waves, touting their goods. Fresh kimchi, winter batch crisp as new snow. Aged, doonyoung, perfect for stew. Jeotgal that'll wake your ancestors. It occurs to you that your ancestors would absolutely run away from some of these jars. But okay. A woman waves you over to her stall, where neatly arranged rows of kimchi varieties glow like a jarred rainbow. She hands you a toothpick, topped with a cube of radish kimchi, bright enough to be considered a fire hazard. You try it. It crackles with the perfect snap, sweet first, then spicy, then a clean sourness that lingers like a satisfied sigh. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your mind. Markets across the Korean peninsula once served as key hubs for exchanging regional ferments. Before refrigeration or easy transport, people relied on these gatherings to discover new flavors and ingredients. Cool northern kimchi, southern seafood ferments, mountain herb pastes, coastal vinegars. Markets weren't just places to buy food. They were cultural cross-pollination zones. You definitely feel pollinated. The vendor beams at your reaction. You like it? She asks. Dangerously so, you reply. She hands you another sample. This one, a kimchi made with mustard greens, sharp enough to make your eyebrows file a complaint. The stall next door catches your attention with its neat stacks of ongi jars labeled in flowing brush strokes. The seller, a wiry man with more enthusiasm than strictly necessary at 10 a.m., pops open a jar. A wave of earthy, nutty aroma escapes. Doenjang, he announces proudly. 3 years aged. You lean closer. The paste is dark, silky, and smells like it knows secrets about you. He thrusts a spoon your way. Taste. You glance around for an escape route, but none appear, so you taste it. Oh, this one has depth. Layers of flavor unfolding like a well-structured essay. The vendor laughs. See? Good doonjang doesn't shout. It whispers, but it whispers truth. You nod thoughtfully, mostly because you can't talk yet. A quirky tidbit rises in your thoughts. In some regions, people believed doonjang could predict the year's fortune. If cracks appeared on the surface, storms were coming. If it fermented smoothly, the harvest would be blessed. You glance at the vendor's stock, quickly smooth as silk. Good. You can relax about your imaginary farm. You move deeper into the market, weaving past baskets of dried anchovies, sacks of barley, jars of pickled garlic, and mountains of peppers drying in the sun. Everywhere, fermentation is happening in real time, bubbling, crackling, breathing. One old man stops you with a raised ladle. "Try mine," he insists, offering a taste of Makgoli cloudy rice wine, faintly fizzy. "This batch is special." You sip. It's sweet, tangy, refreshing, with tiny bubbles dancing on your tongue. The old man nods approvingly. "We stirred this batch during last autumn's harvest moon." You ask if that makes it taste better. He shrugs. "Maybe, maybe not, but it makes the story better." Historians still argue whether the rituals surrounding fermentation, moon stirring, charm tying, seasonal prayers affected the final product, or simply built community around the jars. But tasting this macchioli, you sense the answer. Ritual flavors the food even when it doesn't change the chemistry. Farther in, the crowd thickens. Children run between stalls, carrying skewers of rice cakes. Dogs nap under carts, filled with vegetables. A woman mashes red pepper paste gochujang in a gigantic bowl, her wooden paddle moving in steady, slow circles. You get pulled toward a boisterous stall run by two siblings, locked in an argument intense enough to be its own sport. "I told you," the sister snaps. "This kimchi batch is too salty." "It is perfectly salty," her brother retorts. "Salt is flavor. Salt is life. It is heart attack," she fires back. You edge closer. The jars in question sit between them like guilty defendants. The sister notices you. You, stranger, taste and judge. You blink. A crowd forms immediately, because nothing attracts Koreans like a good public debate, plus snacks. You taste the kimchi. It is salty, but delicious. But definitely salty, but also delicious. This is complicated. You give your verdict carefully. It is beautifully made, and would be excellent in soup. The sister cackles triumphantly. The brother clutches his chest like a wounded poet. The crowd roars with laughter. To soothe his injured pride, you buy a small jar. As you walk on, the marketplace shifts in tone. Near the center, you find stalls for specialty ferments, regional oddities, precious batches aged for years, vinegars made from fruits you didn't know could ferment without committing crimes. One vendor displays jars of plum vinegar, each shimmering a soft ruby color. She lets you smell one. The aroma blooms sweet, tart, floral. "This vinegar heals the heart," she says. "Emotionally?" you ask. "Yes," she replies. "And sometimes, physically, depends on who you ask." Another vendor sells tiny jars of fermented pine needles. You ask what they're for. He shrugs. "Breathing, longevity, fresh breath, possibly meeting immortals." Results vary. You buy one, just in case immortals are in the area. Everywhere you look, there's something bubbling, aging, softening, transforming. The market is not merely a place, it's a living system, a giant exhale of preserved harvests and preserved stories. You pass a group of elderly women haggling intensely over the price of pickled garlic. One of them turns to you and proclaims, "Young people don't understand. Pickles decide a household's fate." You nod solemnly because this feels like a universal truth. At the far edge of the market, you find a quiet stall, hidden in the shade of a broad persimmon tree. The vendor is an elderly man with bright eyes and laugh lines that suggest he's been around long enough to see trends in fermentation come and go 10 times. His table holds only one jar, just one. It's large, it's old, its surface is darkened with age, its lid bound with faded rope. "What's inside?" you ask. He smiles gently. "My family's first gochujang, started by my grandmother's grandmother." You stare. "It's 100 years old." He nods proudly. "We never finish it. We always leave a little. Each new batch grows from the last." You feel your breath catch at the thought time layered into flavor, generations preserved as taste. The man places your hand on the warm clay surface. This, he says, is how families stay alive long after we go. And it hits you then why markets mattered, why jars mattered, why these bubbling, breathing, aging foods shaped communities. Fermentation is memory made edible. A bowl of soup, a spoonful of paste, a sip of wine, each is a conversation with the past. You walk away from the stall slowly, heart fuller than your shopping basket. The market swirls behind you, bright, loud, alive, and you realize you've tasted not just foods today, you've tasted history. The market slowly fades behind you, its swirl of voices and smells dissolving into the quieter rustle of trees and distant bird calls. Your steps carry you away from the clamor and back toward the village, where rooftops sit in gentle rows and smoke curls from chimneys, like sighs after a long day. Your arms are a little heavier now, partly from the jars and small bundles you carry, partly from the weight of everything you've seen, tasted, and learned. By the time you reach the familiar courtyard, the sun is lowering, dipping the edges of clouds in gold. The ongi jars stand where you left them, shoulders warm from the afternoon light. They greet you with that same soft stillness that somehow feels like a welcome. One of the aunties is waiting on the porch, leaning on a pillar like she knew exactly when you'd return. She looks you over, eyes narrowing slightly at your new haul. "You've been shopping," she says. You shrug. "Research," she snorts. "Research that smells like fish sauce." You set your bundles down carefully. She eyes the plum vinegar, the tiny pine needle jar, the pickled odds and ends, but her attention settles on your face more than your hands. After a moment, she nods just the once. "Good," she says. "Now you're ready." "Ready for what?" you ask. She points to a bare spot near the corner of the courtyard, where sunlight still spills in a soft rectangle. "Your own crock," she answers simply. The words land in your chest with surprising weight. She leads you to the storage area, where unused ongi jars are stacked like patient possibilities. You run your fingers along them until one catches your attention. Not the largest, not the prettiest, just right. Its surface is slightly uneven, its glaze a shade darker than the others. It feels like a misfit that's been waiting for a misfit owner. "Good choice," the auntie says, as if the jar agreed first, and you just followed orders. You carry it carefully into the courtyard, placing it in the pool of lingering sunlight. The clay is cool against your palms, but you can feel its capacity for warmth, for change, for hosting entire ecosystems of flavor. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. In many Korean households, each family maintained its own set of dedicated crocks, some for kimchi, some for jang, some for seasonal specialties. Passing down a well-used ongi wasn't just a practical act, it symbolized continuity, inheritance, and trust. Stories didn't always get written, but jars carried them silently. Today, you're not inheriting, you're beginning. The auntie brings out a basket of vegetables, napa cabbage, radish, a handful of mustard greens, a few stalks of green onion. Familiar now. She also sets down a small bowl of gochugaru, some salted shrimp, sliced pear, ginger, garlic, and a splash of something you recognize by scent alone, your favorite doenjang from earlier. "You'll make your own batch," she says. "Not palace style, not merchant style, not this village style." She taps your forehead. "Your style." Your stomach flips a little. There's no recipe written on a scroll, no measurement chart, no elder standing over you barking exact ratios. It's just you, the jar, the air, memory. You start by salting the cabbage, sprinkling grains between each leaf, massaging them gently until they glisten. You've done this many times now, but this time feels different. Each motion feels like a sentence you're writing slowly, with intent. The cabbage squeaks, then softens, releasing its crispness into brine. While it rests, you begin building your seasoning. Garlic and ginger first, smashed and minced until fragrant oils stain your fingers. You add gochugaru, watching the bright red flakes bloom like tiny embers. A spoonful of that deep-aged doenjang joins the mix, grounding the heat. A bit of salted shrimp for depth, slices of pear for sweetness, the kind of sweetness that rounds edges rather than shouts. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some families once used a single unexpected ingredient, a slice of jujube, a sprig of a particular herb, a tiny lump of old jang as a sort of signature in their kimchi. It made their batch identifiable in shared meals and gatherings, a quiet way of saying, "This is ours." You glance at your bundle of pine needle ferment from the market. The scent is bright, resinous, forest-like, very subtle. You hesitate, then add the tiniest splash to your paste, blending until it disappears visually, but adds a faint note of woodland to the aroma. Is this historically common? Probably not. Is it yours? Absolutely. The auntie watches quietly. She doesn't interfere this time, not with your choices, your amounts, your instincts. She only steps in to hand you more scallions when you absent-mindedly use too few. "Trust your nose," she murmurs, "and your tongue, and the air." You rinse the cabbage of excess salt and taste a leaf. It's firm, lightly salty, ready. You smear your paste onto each leaf. Slower now, more mindful. You notice how each leaf curve holds the seasoning differently. Some want more at the base, some want a little extra halfway up. You adjust without thinking, body and senses collaborating. Historians still argue whether ancient fermentation knowledge was taught systematically or absorbed through daily repetition and instinct. Was it science as we define it now, or embodied wisdom passed through hands, noses, and tongues? Standing here with your palms deep in crimson paste, you suspect it was both, inseparable. You pack the cabbage into your chosen jar, leaf by leaf, fold by fold. You press gently, coaxing out air, letting brine rise. Not too tight, you've been warned about suffocating your microbes. Not too loose, either. Just snug, like tucking someone in with the right number of blankets. When the jar is nearly full, you pause. What are you putting into this crock, really? Not just vegetables and spice. There's the memory of the village kitchen, the sea salt mornings, the roasting gochu, the Jang siblings in their dark, fragrant jars. There's the march of merchants across mountains, the quiet discipline of palace cooks, the strange jelly ferments, the loud market arguments, the pine trees, the physician's careful ladles. You're putting all of it here, plus a bit of yourself. You smooth the top, lay a final leaf over the surface like a comforting hand, and place a small stone on top the same way the aunties showed you. A little weight, a little faith. Then you cover the jar. The auntie steps forward and hands you a strip of cloth. "Tie it," she says. You wrap the cloth over the lid and knot it gently, fingers moving with a calm you didn't have when this all began. The knot holds not too tight, not too loose. You step back and look at your jar in its patch of sunlight. It looks ordinary. It feels extraordinary. "This is yours now," the auntie says. "You'll listen to it, taste it, take care of it." She glances at the other jars in the courtyard. "They'll teach it how to behave." You laugh softly at the idea of older crocs mentoring a younger one. But it fits. The sun lowers, staining the sky with colors that look suspiciously like gochujang. Deep orange, bright red, soft gold. A breeze moves through the courtyard, brushing lightly across the jars. You watch your croc, half expecting it to nod back at you. It doesn't, but somehow, you know things have already begun inside. You sit down beside it, back against the warm house wall, knees drawn up. For a long time, you do nothing but breathe. The air carries faint threads of garlic, chili, earth, stone, and something else you can't name yet. Future flavor. You close your eyes and let the world narrow to the sound of your own breathing, the quiet hum of the village, the nearly imperceptible presence of tiny lives waking in brine. Your jar, your crock, your story, slowly starting to ferment. The courtyard has quieted by the time twilight unfurls its soft violet edges across the rooftops. Your jar sits exactly where you left it, soaking in the last warmth of the fading day. The other ongi crocks seem to lean companionably toward it, as if acknowledging a new member of their slow-breathing, ever-fermenting community. You move toward them without thinking, drawn the way dusk is drawn toward night, naturally, seamlessly, with a kind of gentle gravity. You sit beside your crock, resting your palms lightly on its warm lid, half expecting it to pulse back like a heartbeat. And maybe it does, in its own microscopic way. The courtyard air feels deeper now, carrying the faint hum of invisible work beginning under clay and brine. You exhale slowly, the way someone does when they realize a day has quietly changed them. A nearby auntie shuffles out with 2 cups of warm barley tea. She hands one to you and lowers herself onto the porch step with the sigh of a woman whose joints have unionized. "It starts today," she murmurs. "Your jar's first night." You cradle your cup, letting the steam wash your face. "Do you think it'll turn out well?" She sips her tea, squints at your jar, and shrugs. "Maybe, maybe not. Fermentation has opinions." She nudges your shoulder, but it never wastes effort. The words settle into your chest like warm broth. You look at your jar again, feeling an unexpected swell of tenderness for the brine, the cabbage, the paste for all the tiny labors beginning inside. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. In many families, the final step of preparing a crock wasn't sealing it or storing it. It was quietly sitting with it. A moment of presence, a tiny ritual acknowledging the merging of ingredients, season, and intention. Not religious, not formal, just human. You're doing that now, without even trying. A breeze stirs through the courtyard, brushing across the stone, tugging gently at your sleeves. Somewhere far off, a dog barks at nothing in particular. A few birds trade final gossip before tucking themselves into branches. The air smells faintly of earth, chili, cooled stone, and something new. Potential. You take another sip of tea, letting warmth seep downward. "It's strange," you admit softly. "I didn't expect a jar of cabbage to feel like a milestone." The auntie laughs, a low, kind laugh that wrinkles every line on her face. "Of course it is. People think food is just food, but food remembers." She taps her temple. "Food keeps score." Then she taps your jar. "And food becomes a companion if you let it." You trace the rim of the crock, absent-mindedly. Inside, your paste, your seasoning, your choices are already mingling, slow, deliberate, alchemical. The day's journey through mountains, markets, palaces, and storerooms suddenly feels like it's condensed here into one vessel, one breath, one flavor waiting to bloom. A quirky tidbit surfaces. In some regions, people believed that their personality subtly shaped their kimchi. Calm people made mild kimchi. Fiery people made explosive kimchi. People who couldn't decide things made inconsistent kimchi. The auntie insists this is nonsense, but she also insists her nephew's kimchi tastes lazy, so take that for what it's worth. You wonder what your jar will taste like, what part of you it will carry. Probably the part that panics less now than you did 2 weeks ago. Night deepens. Stars appear one by one, soft pinpricks of cool silver. They cast faint gleams across the jars, turning them into dark, drowsy guardians. The auntie rises slowly, bones clicking like well-used chopsticks. She pats your shoulder. "You stay as long as you like," she says. Jars appreciate company. She disappears inside, leaving you with your crock in the night air. Historians still argue whether ancient fermentation practices were closer to science or spirituality, whether people understood microbial transformation, or whether they simply trusted the world to reshape itself in the dark. Sitting here, listening to the faint evening sounds, you realize it doesn't matter. Trust is its own kind of science. Patience is its own kind of spirituality. You touch the jar again, lightly. The clay holds a faint warmth under your fingertips. Something shifts inside, so small you might have imagined it. Or maybe it's real. Maybe the transformation has already started. You lean back, resting your head against the wooden pillar behind you. The courtyard is dim now, soaked in quiet. Your breathing synchronizes with the stillness. The jar stands beside you like a friend settling in, ready for the long, slow work ahead. You think about the villagers who showed you their winter stores, the palace cooks who whispered secrets over steaming bowls, the market vendors with their chaotic confidence, the merchants carrying jang across mountain roads, the pine trees, the wind, the hands that guided yours, and the hands that once guided them. Generations of quiet work, generations of jars, generations of memory held in salt and time. And now, your turn, your jar, your season, your beginning. You breathe in deeply. The night air tastes faintly of chili and possibility. You exhale softly. Your jar seems to settle, like it's agreeing. Change has started. And you, sitting here in the soft cradle of dusk, feel it settle in you too slow, warm, and deeply, deeply human. The courtyard grows quieter still, until even the small sounds, your breath, the faint shifting of night air, the distant murmur of the village seem to slow into a gentle rhythm, meant only for rest. The jars settle into their own shadows, rounded silhouettes against the soft shimmer of moonlight, and your own thoughts begin to loosen, unspooling like threads slipping free from a careful weave. You feel the stillness pooling around you, deep and warm, the way broth fills a bowl or brine, settles over ingredients just before they fall into calm. You let your shoulders drop. You let the breath deepen. You let the day soften its grip. The night stretches across the sky in long, easy strokes, each star drifting into place as if guided by a hand that has been doing this since time first learned to move. Even your jar seems quieter now, no bubbling yet, no rush, just a soft waiting, a gentle readiness, a promise that transformation happens slowly, almost invisibly, while the world sleeps. And maybe that's the lesson these ancient foods have been whispering to you all along, that growth doesn't need urgency, that change doesn't need to be loud, that beginnings often feel like stillness. Fermentation waits for no applause. It works in the dark, in silence, in faith. So you close your eyes a little, then a little more. The cool air on your skin softens into something velvety and forgiving. You imagine the fields that fed these jars, the hands that shaped them, the seasons that carried them, all of it drifting gently now, settling like warm sediment at the bottom of a clear bowl. You are safe. You are warm. You have time, more than enough time. Let the night close its arms around you. Let the quiet take you gently. Sleep comes slowly. Then all at once,